passion, excitement for the gospel
La passione, la gioia che Paolo aveva per il Vangelo
was due to the fact
era determinata e derivava dal fatto
that he never lost sight
che non aveva mai perso di vista
of who he was before the
chi era
gospel.
prima di credere.
Hello, my dear friends. I hope you're doing well. Hey, thanks for taking a few minutes to watch this video. My intention is to provide you with a recap of some of the highlights of the trip to Italy. I hope that they're encouraging to you. When I think about the trip, I have a hard time even finding a place to begin, but perhaps I'll start with this. By God's grace, I had the opportunity to teach some of the dear saints in Sicily, which is in the very end of the southern tip of Italy. I had the opportunity to teach in a couple of different contexts. In one of the contexts, I preached a sermon with the help of a translator from 1 Timothy 1 verses 12 to 17. And my point was to remind Christians of how we can remain passionate about Christ even as we mature, as we grow, as we get older in our relationship with Christ. I hope that was encouraging to them. The other opportunity that I had to teach was with a few believers in a town called Catania. I taught the believers here from Romans 1:16 and reminded them of the power of the gospel to save sinners. It was a call to evangelism. I hope that this was encouraging to those believers as well. I also want to tell you about this really exciting thing that the Lord did that totally was unexpected yet blew me away. As you remember, our friend Evan Gonzalez. Evan Gonzalez was a part of Living Hope Church for a year before he graduated from the University of Arkansas and pursued his master's degree in Italy. Well, as you know, there are a few evangelical churches throughout the land in Italy. And for somebody who doesn't know the language like Evan, or even knows just a little bit of the language, it can be quite difficult to locate those churches. By God's grace, the Lord has raised up faithful churches throughout parts of Italy. So those churches are there. Those churches are available to believers. But if you don't know the language, it can be quite challenging to locate where these churches meet. Well, by God's grace, I met the right people on this trip and was able to connect Evan and these people. And within 30 minutes of making this connection, one of these brothers was able to point Evan to a local evangelical faithful church that meets in the town that he goes to college. My friends, this just blew my mind. How kind of the Lord. Without this trip, could that have been possible? So I'm praising God for that. I also want to draw your attention to one more thing. This was a sweet, sweet providence of God. One of our friends in Sovereign Grace, Ed O'Mara, he's a pastor in Maryland, and his plan is to plant a church in Italy in the coming years. In fact, this July, his family is preparing to move from Maryland to Italy to begin learning the language, or better learn the language and the culture, get acclimated to everything in Italy. Well, Ed O'Meara knows about several of these Christians that I had the opportunity to meet, but these Christians haven't yet, and some of them haven't yet heard of Ed O'Meara. So by God's grace, I was able to connect their hands. By God's grace, I was able to tell these Christians in Italy about Ed O'Meara, the Sovereign Grace pastor, this brother who's coming in the coming months to do a gospel work and plant the church and to come alongside and to lock arms with other faithful brothers and sisters, other faithful local churches. I thought this was such a gift from the Lord. I'm hoping, and who knows what the Lord has planned, but I'm hoping that our church, at Living Hope Church, could become a place which joyfully partners with the work that Ed O'Meara is going to be doing in the coming years and months and years. I'm hoping that perhaps we could send short-term trips. Perhaps we could financially support them, those sorts of things. And this trip was a step in that direction. And so I'm praising God for that. So, how am I praying for this trip? I'm praying that God would use this trip. I'm praying that God would use this trip to be the match which lights the foundation of Kinlan that we have laid for missions over the last 6 months. Would you join me in praying for that? Here's what we want. We want Living Hope Church to be a local church in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where as believers come in, that there is a palpable pulse of passion for the glory of God in the advancement of the gospel locally and extra locally. That there is a palpable pulse of our passion to see the gospel go into the nations. So my friends, would you please join me in praying to that end, for the glory of God, for our joy, for the good of the nations. God bless you, my friends. Thank you for watching this video. I'm grateful for you.